Jeremy Corbyn's the finest socialist in Parliament, and when we had his anniversary, 30 years in Parliament, I said he's my closest friend in Parliament, to which my wife said he's your only friend. Can we just focus the discussion on how we move from where we are now in, I think general understanding here and appreciation that we need to bring these services back into public ownership and control, how we moved from that into Janine's objective, which is to get this within the Labour manifesto, because I think that's the most important discussion. And the Labour front bench, I have a lot of time for Ed Miliband on a personal level. Since John Smith, he's the first Labour leader I've warmed to in any way. But sometimes you just feel like shaking him. You know what I mean? And in the nicest possible way. I felt like shaking previous Labour leaders, but by the throat. And it's for this reason, and it pervades the Labour front bench generally, and sometimes with the PLP. There's a viewpoint. There's a naivety. There's this naivety about the whole issue of the provision of services, and they keep repeating, it's not about who owns, it's what works. That's the slogan, is what works is what's best. That's what they come at it straight away. And I think there's a naivety around what's happened in terms of past privatisations, and they will not shift on a policy until it is so popular it's safe to do so. And we've gone through this discussion time and time again, and I keep saying this, the role of all of us is to make an issue safe so they feel confident to shift on this. This is a reverse form of leadership. In fact, I think it's a better form of leadership. I think the people lead rather than the leaders, and the leaders follow us. And I think that we have a responsibility as Labour Party members, trade unionists, and anyone in the progressive movement, if we're interested in restoring these services to public ownership, we've got to shift public opinion in such a way that the Labour leadership feels safe to move on that issue. Because that's how it worked on the tax evasion avoidance. It wasn't the Labour front bench that suddenly decided that was an issue. It was a campaign, like the tax justice campaign, that led to UK Uncut, became a popular issue. Then they shifted. It was the same on bankers' bonuses. It was the same on Murdoch. Andrew was with me at the time. We were the only people opposing Murdoch's purchasing B-Sky at one point in time. We were seen as pariahs. Then the Dowler question came up, and all of a sudden Murdoch was out, and it became safe to shift on that issue, and Miliband did that. That's the nature of the Labour leadership that we've got, and I don't worry about that because we've gone through big leaders like Blair and Brown and all the rest of it. You can't shift them at all, but you can with this Labour leadership. So I think what we've got to do now is to basically have a frank discussion in the wider community about what privatisation has really been about, that we can mobilise then and get the Labour Party leadership shifted so that we can get it in the manifesto. And I don't think it is about the provision of public services, but what I think we should be straight about this is corporate kleptocracy. Can you remember that word was invented in the 60s and 70s, and it referred to around the world in developing countries where kleptomaniacs took over the state to rob and steal from their own people. Well, that's what this has been. Now, for 30 years, we have a corporate kleptocracy, and it has certain features. The scale of it, in 2008, I was one of the few people who raised the 2003 on the GPOs, on the Mail stuff and all the rest on the European thing. It was interesting, the union-sponsored MPs disappeared on the night, and there was left to me and Jeremy and a couple of others slugging it out. And at that point in time, we were at maybe about £6 billion worth of public expenditure going to the private sector. By 2008, it got to £9 billion. Within 3 years after the election of this government, it was £20 billion, and by next year, the prediction, Michael Coulbank's little booklet for TUCG is quite good on this. He looks at parliamentary questions that have been answered. It looks though by the end of next year, by this general election, £100 billion worth of public services will have been privatised and put out to the private sector. That's a staggering amount that's gone on there. And what are the features of this form of kleptocracy? First of all, don't think there's all these competing companies going for these contracts. There's an oligarchy basically, there's a cartel, and we go through them, you know them, Serco, Capita, Atos and G4S. They basically control the market. Lots of smaller individual companies will bid in, but they'll be subsidiaries of those big four. So we've got a cartel in our hands. It's incredibly lucrative. On the three of those companies, in the last couple of years, their shares have doubled in price. 100% increase. Capita, 140% increase in the share price. Incredible. On average now, individually now, they're making about 200 or 300 million as a result of the contracts that they've not now got. Absolutely staggering. And a lot of the contracts they're now being awarded, like probation, are being awarded not on legislation introduced by this coalition government, but legislation that was introduced by the last government. On the probation, I think unwittingly, although we warned them at the time in the debate, nevertheless they drove it through. This issue about moral hazard that Andrew raised is absolutely critical, because these cheeky sods now come back when they're in financial difficulty, and they are too big to fail. So Great Western Railways goes into financial crisis just the year when they're meant to be paying 800 million back to the government, the Treasury. And what does the government do? Rips up the contract and yet still awards them extension of the existing contract without having to pay the 800 million for another 3 years. So they get away basically with walking off with $1 billion gratis from us. In terms of tax as well, these are companies that are profligate tax avoiders. There's a figure that was put out, and I'm not sure whether Richard Murphy's checked it yet, but of the first billion that the Big Four made, they paid only 75 million in terms of tax. That's absolutely scandalous. So they rip us off, they don't deliver the service, and they don't pay the taxes either. Let's just go through some of the service delivery. This would be laughable if it wasn't so sad. People here are a better knowledge than me of Atos, the £500 million contract that they got for the work capability assessment, where 1,300 people were assessed as capable for work and then died. And this is an absolute bloody tragedy. Read Callum's list, the number of people who've committed suicide as a result of the treatment of this firm. But it became so bad for them as a result of the protest that we made, they've now been giving the contract back. But they won't be penalised for that. They'll be allowed to take the profits they've made so far. And I think they'll come back because they're already now bidding for a whole range of other areas with the GWP. Serco. Let me just give the example this weekend, Serco. Did you see the front page of the Observer with Yarlswood? Yeah. So hiding a report that exposed the rape and sexual exploitation of the detainees by their workforce. Absolutely scandalous. In my constituency, detention centres, which are run by private companies, you may have saw the story last year. 83-year-old man dies in handcuffs in the detention centre. They take him to Hillsborough Hospital 2 hours before he died. He still dies in handcuffs. Brutal. G4S. That's just laughable. Olympics, tagging, Oakwood Prison, G4S. The Home Office Prison's inspector, his report 3 months ago, apart from the riots, which there have been, POA have exposed the assaults on staff. The inspector said it's easier to get drugs in Oakwood than it is to get a bar of soap. That's in his report, G4S. The best one I like was the court interpreters. They privatised that until the judges made a complaint that I think there was a Chinese prisoner who was being tried or something like that, and the interpreter turned up and only speak Portuguese. It went on like that. It was just staggering incompetence. But what there is, and I think this is what we need to be campaigning, there's a symbiosis between the companies and government now. There's this revolving door of not just civil servants who've gone into companies, but companies who are placing their people within the departments as well. And then also ministers who've awarded contracts to companies or who've privatised within their field and then become advisors and consultants to the company. And we've got them from the last government as well, haven't we? Milburn. Milburn is now a consultant to a company that's involved in NHS privatisation, and he was Secretary of State before. What's interesting in rail as well, they're not averse to the state running individual services, as long as it's not the British state. Because what's happening is German rail, everyone else is coming and taking over and taking the profits. It's just staggering. And also, I just refer you to, in local government it's now permeated as well. I refer you to a report 3 months ago, which was done by Transparency International. This is the organisation that monitors corruption right the way across the world, internationally renowned. It does that chart of corruption, different countries at different levels. It's just published a report, and I raised it with Eric Pickles. Anyway, I raised it. Anyway, what they're saying is the new structures, the new rules, and the cutbacks, etc., in terms of national monitoring and audit, has meant that probity is now at risk within local government, and we're vulnerable now to a scale of corruption we've never seen before in this country. within that area of public services. And just on Andrew's point, who gains from all this? Well, the top 1% in the last period of recovery have gained 95% of the gains of that recovery. The directors of these companies now, on average, they're paid 133 times the average wage of their workers. Just scandalous. And the good thing, I think, I don't know what it was, it might have been Michael or somebody else, or Seb Corbyn, just calculated, because there's Fat Cat Day now in January the 8th, I think it is, and the first 3 days of this year, each one of their directors of their companies earn in 3 days what their workers would earn in the whole year. We're just pouring money into the pockets. This is theft and robbery, isn't it? This is kleptocracy, corporate kleptocracy. And I think we've got to get out there and get that debate across. At the moment, everyone has said, all the opinion polls are opposed to privatisation. All the opinion polls are saying they want rail brought back into the country. 85% of UKIP voters are opposed to privatisation. That's just staggering. I think the message is there that we can mobilise on and mobilise different campaigns about it to put pressure on Labour now to demonstrate that this is a safe issue to include in the Labour manifesto. I think after Thursday there might be an element of panic among some of the mainstream parties because of the UKIP's rise and all the rest of it. I hope there isn't, but if there is, I'm afraid we've got to seize that opportunity. Because we've got to be saying to the Labour leadership, we need some very clear messages out there that give people hope. And one clear message is saying, for example, we will end all privatisation in the NHS. I think it'd be immensely popular. Bring rail back into public ownership. End all the privatisations that are going on within the justice system that are putting the whole community at risk. And I think that will actually give us the opportunity of actually having a majority Labour government. I don't want to be in a position where we're in coalition with the Liberals, having to do deals and all the rest of it. I want a majority Labour government, but we'll only get that if we have a very clear message on each of these issues. So this next few months, I think we should be looking, as party members, trade unions and others, on each of these privatisations to be running campaigns to expose them and then to demonstrate public opposition to them and public support from Labour being very clear that we're in favour of public ownership and democratic control and we're opposed to privatisation.
Thanks very much, John. And as the